Hi, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking to Linda Page, who is a local speech and language therapist and helps people, adults and children, with AAC. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So Linda, welcome.
Thank you.
And I think the best place to start, because it's an acronym, AAC, and lots of people might not know what that stands for. So what is AAC?
Well, AAC stands for augmentative and alternative communication. And that's really any method of communication that we can use that will either replace speech altogether or will supplement an individual speech.
Okay, so, and that's for adults and children?
Absolutely, for adults and children.
Okay, and regardless of diagnosis?
Regardless of diagnosis, yes.
Okay.
People may need to use AAC for a whole range of different reasons across all different ages and all different diagnoses. It could be somebody with cerebral palsy, it could be somebody with a learning disability, it could be somebody with motor neuron disease or cancer, somebody with a head injury, dementia, Parkinson's disease. There's a whole range of different reasons why AAC can be really helpful to an individual.
Okay, and from my little experience I have of AAC, I understand there's a vast range of types of AAC, from very, very low tech to very high tech. And I think you've got some examples here with you. So maybe we could have a look at those.
Indeed. And I think it's really important to say at this point that quite a number of individuals will use more than one method of augmentative or alternative communication. So we might be using a letterboard for somebody who's got literacy skills. And indeed that person might do a little bit of handwriting. Or we might be using symbols, either symbols or photographs presented separately to somebody or on a board. And really all of these things are personalised to the individual. These are all low-tech methods of communication. We do, of course, have signing as a method of augmentative communication. Also, the use of gesture and facial expression is a really important method that, in fact, we all use.
Yes.
Moving on from the low-tech methods I just showed you, high-tech methods of communication include symbol-based recorded speech devices.
Okay.
And again, you just personalise the messages that the individual would want to use onto the device, and there's a whole range of these. And you also get high-tech devices that are text-to-speech, that have got a speech synthesizer. So by typing in a message and hitting the correct button,
Hi,
you are able to speak out a message using a speech synthesizer.
Okay, so some of these will be dependent on the individual's ability. So that one, you'd need to be able to isolate a finger to be able to type and have the understanding to be able to type a word out.
Yes.
Okay.
And other high-tech devices might be touchscreen devices, might use symbols, and again, you're touching the screen on this one to speak out a message. But in fact, you're raising a really, really important point. Not everybody who'd want to use or who would benefit from using AAC can use a finger to isolate onto a keyboard or a touch screen. There's a whole range of different access methods that we can support people with physical disabilities to use AAC. Some of them might be scanning using a switch. Some of them might be eye gaze, either low-tech eye gaze, looking with your eyes at pictures or words or letters on a frame.
So a bit like those boards we were looking at with images, but then somebody who's working with you can try and work out which picture you're looking at. I've got
and
you.
There's also high-tech eye gaze. So that's an eye gaze camera that's linked to a high-tech AAC device or computer that tracks your eyes and allows you to choose either text on screen or symbols on screen. So there's a whole range of different methods of access.
Yes. Okay. So I think you've probably answered this question already, but I sort of had in my mind why would you not all just use sign language? But I guess that's down to physical ability.
It is, although even people who've got physical challenges in making signs, we'll use signs and gestures. It's just really important that the communication partner knows what movement or what adaptation to the particular sign that they're making. But the other challenge for people who perhaps only use sign language as an AAC method is that not everybody they meet will be able to support the conversation because they may well not understand and not be able to use signs themselves.
How would you know what type of AAC is going to be right for any particular person? So if there's a parent at home watching this thinking, well, yeah, my child isn't able to or has difficulty communicating, where would you know where to start?
It's about having a chat with the family members, meeting the individual, meeting the team around about the individual, and getting information about their physical abilities, their interests, their preferences, and their communication environment. And then it's actually a case of, if it's going to be a device-based piece of equipment, taking out some equipment and looking to try it with that person.
Okay.
And I must say that it's not a case of, if a person has a particular diagnosis, that this particular device is right for them. It's not as scientific as that at all. One of, I think, the biggest factors in identifying the right device for somebody is around about whether they like it or not. It's about finding something that they can use well, that they can learn to use well, and that they're going to be motivated to use. If somebody likes it and feels it's going to benefit them, they will work hard to learn the skills to use it and to be successful communicators.
Because that raises an interesting point you're saying about having to work hard. There is investment in terms of time in learning to use AAC.
Absolutely.
And not just for the person.
Yes, AAC is not magic. It is a lot of hard work and effort for the person who uses AAC. They have to put in the time. Some of the systems take longer to learn to use than others. And a key person in supporting the AAC user is the communication partner. And if the communication partner isn't attuned to that individual using AAC, doesn't listen, doesn't pay attention, the interactions will not necessarily for that individual be as successful. Over the years, when I've met up with people who use AAC, they've given me some golden rules of what's really important to them in conversation partners. And what people have said to me are, talk to me and not my support worker or family member. Be face to face with me. Give me eye contact. Don't read my screen. Wait for me to speak out my message if I'm using high tech. Don't finish my sentences or guess what it is I'm going to say. And make sure that you're giving me extra time is a key point that they make, because it does take extra time to use an AAC system.
And when you say communicate, you use the term a couple of times, communication partner. So what does that mean?
It's the person who's speaking to the individual who's using AAC.
So for a child, that quite a lot of the time that might be a parent, but then once you're out in the outside world, it's anybody who you're trying to communicate with.
Absolutely.
Becomes your communication partner. Okay, so I see the importance of that. Is there a danger, or is there any evidence to show either way that starting to use some kind of AAC would actually hinder somebody's ability to then learn to speak, especially if you're talking about a young child?
Yes. No, there's not. There's numerous publications which have backed up the evidence that practitioners working in the field have found that introducing AAC does not stop the development of speech. We always encourage that where it's possible that a young person would speak along with using their AAC device.
Okay.
Perhaps use their AAC device for starting a message and use speech for maybe a key word. So AAC is about using all the person's methods of communication. So it's not about one or the other.
Okay. And if somebody's been watching this film and can identify with some of the things you're saying, how do they go about trying to access kit like this?
I think the first thing is I would really hope that anybody who feels that a family member would benefit from using AAC would have access to the support of a speech and language therapist. So if you do have a speech and language therapist, have a chat with a speech and language therapist about that. All speech and language therapists are knowledgeable about augmenting communication and can very often start you on that journey of starting to use signs or symbols or voice output. Sometimes it's really important to be referred on to a specialist AAC service. And again, your speech and language therapist will be able to give you information about that.
Okay. Are there any national organisations that people anywhere in the UK might be able to access for information like that, just if they want to do their own research?
Yes, yep. There's Communication Matters is a national organisation. It's a charity that really brings together people who use AAC, their families, and a whole range of different professionals working in the field. They produce a publication, they have an annual conference, and they've got a really good website. It will give you information on all the different AAC services across the United Kingdom because, unsurprisingly, the structure is different in each of the countries. And there's a lot of other information on that website. It's really well worth a look. There's also some other really good websites that I can signpost people to, and these were actually developed in Scotland as part of the Right to Speak project a few years ago, and they're really worth a look. They've got some really good resources on them, some nice videos, and information about AAC. One of them is called AAC Scotland, and the other one is Now Hear Me. And I'd really recommend people to take the time to have a wee look at them.
Okay, fantastic, because that's really good to know that if you just want to have a little bit of a research and find a few things out yourself before you take it any further, that there's resources out there that you can use. And I think you were saying earlier there's some printouts and you were saying videos and all sorts of things that you can access on there. So
the videos are really nice because some of the videos show people using, children and adults, using a whole range of different AAC systems, both low-tech and high-tech.
Okay, so we'll put the link for that below the film. And we're here in Scotland, and there's been some movements in legislation recently in this area particularly. And am I right in saying there is now a right to AAC when it's appropriate?
Indeed, yes.
Okay.
Came into law earlier on this year, and it was an amendment to the Health Bill. And what that's actually looking to do is to ensure that anybody with a communication difficulty who would benefit from using AAC, and they talk about it in the legislation as communication equipment, so it's low-tech or high-tech AAC, would be able to get access to that equipment, but also very importantly to the support to use that equipment.
Okay, so in other words, a speech and language therapist.
Yes, but it's not all the role of a speech and language therapist. Okay. It's really important that the people around about that child or that adult, other healthcare workers, education staff, support staff, everybody's got a role in supporting communication. Okay.
That's been really interesting, and I think it's a real whistle-stop tour to what AAC is. Really, I hope just to give everybody an idea of what we're talking about, how you might go about it, all the different varieties of resources there are, and then maybe we'll do something a bit more in-depth another time. But thank you very much, Linda.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks for watching. If you have a caring role as part of your life, you'll know that finding reliable information can be quite tricky, and that's what this channel is all about. I release new films every week about all sorts of subjects relating to being a carer for young and old. So why not subscribe? It's free. Just follow the link there with my picture on it, and it'll take you to subscribe to my channel, and that means that you'll get notified every time there's a new film to watch, and I'd really appreciate that.